So, did the Toronto Maple Leafs make a catastrophic mistake by letting Mason Marchment walk away? I mean, this is the narrative that just refuses to die.
He really is.
Every single time the team needs, some net front presence or a big goal, the ghost of Marchment seems to come up. It's the perfect, almost bittersweet hockey story.
Yeah, the homegrown kid, the developmental success who's now haunting the very organization that let him go. It's an incredibly powerful, emotional story.
And that's why it resonates so deeply with the fan base.
Exactly. But our source material for this deep dive, it really aims to strip away that romance and just look at the cold, hard, analytical truth. The core conclusion here is that Marchment is less of a long-term solution and more of a mirage.
A mirage. That's a really strong claim. So you're saying the source suggests the Leafs actually dodged a bullet by choosing to keep Bobby McMann instead.
That's the argument. And it runs completely counter to the public discussion, I know.
It does.
But hockey is played under a salary cap, and, emotion doesn't pay the bills. The sources argue the Leafs front office saw this as a potential financial trap.
Okay, so our mission for you today is to break this all down. The emotional argument versus the analytical reality. We're going to dig into the numbers and see if this Marchment decision was an organizational failure or actually a masterclass in modern roster management. Let's unpack this. The mythology, I think, it has to begin with that hometown connection. Marchment grew up in this system.
Right.
And that fact alone creates this the unbreakable emotional bond with the fan base. They watch him develop, they feel invested, and when he succeeds somewhere else, it just hurts doubly.
He carries that special glow of a prospect who should have stayed.
Yeah.
And that success, it was undeniable during his peak season. We're talking 2023-24 with the Dallas Stars.
Those are the numbers that really cemented the whole narrative.
Absolutely. 22 goals, 31 assists, a highly respectable 53 points. That is, on paper, precisely what Toronto was lacking, a powerful top six forward who could generate offense.
And it's those numbers that make fans say, see, the Leafs had this player and they let him go. But if you put up that kind of production, how can the source possibly call him a mirage?
This is where we have to look beyond the basic box score. The source is really focused on isolation metrics and expected goals. And what's fascinating is the context that's always ignored. Those 53 points were achieved, while Marchment was basically stapled to one of the most dominant lines in hockey. He was flanked by Jason Robertson, Roope Hintz, and Joe Pavelski.
So he was a complementary piece, not the engine driving the play.
Exactly. But, even a complementary piece needs skill. You can't just stand there and score 22 goals if you don't have talent. What do the metrics actually say about him not driving the offense?
That's a fair point.
Well, the sources highlight two things. First, Dallas runs a system designed to maximize chaos in the high slot. Hintz and Robertson are incredible at forcing goalies to move, which lets a big 6'5" body like Marchment just park in the blue paint for rebounds. And when the sources looked at his expected goals percentage, it dropped by almost 15 points when he was away from those elite line mates. That suggests his finishing was highly dependent on the chances created for him.
So his high production was conditional.
Yeah.
It was tied to a perfect, very specific environment.
Exactly. He was the perfect accessory for a designer suit, but he wasn't the suit itself. Which leads us to the comparison that makes the whole mythology start to crumble.
His production outside of Dallas.
Yeah, and it gets much starker when you look at his current value. Since that career year, Marchment was traded, and his production has, to use the source's language, fallen off a cliff in Seattle.
How bad is it?
It's abysmal. His current pace with the Kraken, just 4 goals and 9 points in 29 games. If you stretch that over a full season, he's on pace for only about 11 goals.
11 goals. And what's the $4.5 million problem the sources mentioned?
That's the financial burden. He's carrying a $4.5 million cap hit for that 11-goal production. For a championship contender, that kind of contract for a third or fourth line forward, it's a liability. It's an opportunity cost that star teams just cannot afford to make.
Which sets the stage perfectly for the man they chose instead. We move from the big romantic story of Marchment to the quiet excellence of Bobby McMann.
The analytical choice?
Right, he came up without any fanfare. He just spent years grinding in the AHL, earning his spot the hard way.
McMann is the reality Toronto embraced. He doesn't have the hometown legacy, but he has the production and, most importantly, the contract value.
So let's detail that production. Last season, McMann put up 20 goals and 14 assists. That's 34 points in 74 games.
And while that isn't the 53 points Marchment had in Dallas, it's very comparable to Marchment's output in pretty much all of his other seasons.
Plus, McMann brings the size, the physicality, and critically, versatility. He can play up and down the lineup.
But the core of the argument really hinges on the financial equation. McMann delivered those 20 goals while making only $1.35 million.
Okay, so that's the fundamental difference.
It's a staggering value gap. Let's make sure everyone really grasps what that difference buys you. We've got Marchment on pace for 11 goals at $4.5 million.
And McMann producing 20 goals at $1.35 million.
The math is just unforgiving. McMann delivered better production, nearly double the goals, at 30% of the cost. The savings of $3.15 million isn't just flexibility, it's absolutely massive for a team that's always juggling cap space.
And that $3.15 million, that's the pivot point for the whole calculation. It's the difference between being competitive and being handcuffed. What kind of assets does that saving let them get?
That capital is often the margin of victory. The sources point out that $3.15 million is exactly what you pay for a reliable third-pair defenseman who can eat up 18 minutes a night.
Or a solid backup goalie.
Or, more commonly, it's the amount you need to sweeten a contract to keep a key third-line center who might otherwise walk. Bad contracts force you to lose better pieces later.
We've established the money, but let's talk style of play. The source says a fundamental issue with Marchment is that he's a system player. The Seattle experiment proves his production isn't portable.
And that is the trap every GM fears. They see success in one environment and just assume it can be replicated. When you invest $4.5 million, you're betting you can recreate the exact conditions Dallas had.
Which is almost impossible.
And the evidence shows that without Robertson and Hintz setting the table, Marchment just struggles to generate his own chances. In contrast, there's no guessing game with Bobby McMann.
He's a known quantity.
Precisely. He's already proven he can produce in Toronto's system, with their line mates in their usage patterns. No high-risk gamble.
But let me challenge that for a second. Marchment is 6'5". That size, that net front power.
Yeah.
That's exactly what Toronto fans complain the team lacks in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even if he's only scoring 11 goals, doesn't the intangible value of that sheer physicality have to factor in?
That's a valid point about intangibles, but size alone is only valuable if it translates to winning hockey, especially under that kind of cap hit.
Okay. And when you look at the age and contract trajectory, the physical argument weakens. Marchment is 30 years old. Power forwards who rely on physicality tend to decline sharply in their early 30s.
So that 53-point campaign in Dallas might have genuinely been his absolute ceiling.
And that's the danger. If his production slips even a little bit further, his $4.5 million deal instantly becomes albatross territory real fast. He becomes an unmovable contract that hurts you for years.
McMann, on the other hand, is only a year younger at 29, but his $1.35 million deal is team-friendly and super flexible.
And that's the difference between a depreciating asset and a bargain. If McMann keeps his 20-goal pace, he's a steal. If he drops off, the contract is easy to manage. They chose the flexible, cost-effective asset over the high-risk liability that was wrapped up in nostalgia.
This really brings up the ultimate question the sources explore. What truly wins championships? And the conclusion seems to be